So, Greg, here we are at Unleash Software, the business that you founded in 2009. But I wanted to go back to perhaps your earlier days. As a kid, were you thinking then about the fact, hey, I'm going to go into software design?
Absolutely not. I was a bit of a school dropout, didn't like school at all, and couldn't wait till I was 16 and just left without anything. But kind of got steamrolled by my mother into going to a warehousing course, which is kind of great in retrospect, because I got to learn a bit about warehousing on like a 3-month course, part of which was a placement. And so my first job was putting dice into Yahtzee on a conveyor belt. Very proud of it now, but that kind of led to a warehousing role. I became a storeman at the age of 17 for a multinational, which was fantastic. And again, in retrospect, it was great foundations for what I do now, which is inventory software. But it was not like a dream at all, no.
Was that got you thinking early, though, about systems? Was that the part of that experience that perhaps started to make you think, hey, there might be some opportunities here?
Yeah. I mean, I remember having to pick orders, and I thought, wow, I wonder if this stock could be a bit closer so it's a bit more efficient. Or I wonder how quick I can pick this order because the other guys seem a bit slow. So there was something about efficiency with the stock, and I remember I unpacked 2 containers by myself in one day. Just this little things, but it was all about trying to see if you could do things better and faster, and it just so happened to revolve around kind of inventory. So there was something that clicked, I think, there. Not because I was born with it or anything like that. It's just something that kind of came or happened over the few years while working in the warehouse.
So that's interesting. You didn't go down the university route. So you're all self-taught. So where did the software or the entrepreneurship DNA begin to kick in?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I was at that multinational for about 9 years in the end because I got stuck into the computers to receipt stock and things like that, and they could see that I wasn't too bad at it, and I got kind of a promotion. I got to wear a tie and sit up in the offices, and I got stuck into shipping. So the costings, the acquisitions, ports, the charges, all that kind of stuff, and that was cool. So I did that for a few years. But I guess at the end of the 6-year office piece, I'd ended up running the warehouses in New Zealand, and found I could talk quite well, which is a big part of it. So I learned to communicate. I'd learnt this big clunky AS400 system. And they were customizing it, so I put in requests to the tech guys. And probably one of the best things that happened is that about a year before I left, they decided to upgrade to SAP globally. And I was part of that team, right? So I got stuck into how data should be formatted and exported and imported and all the processes that come with a new software system. So in that 9 years, I kind of I did the ladder, right? From the very bottom up to probably as far as I could go in inventory, and it was crossed over the whole way with software. Which again, looking back, I had no intention of this then, right? But it's just given me this great understanding of both.
Did you surprise yourself actually how well you did?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, at the time, it sounds a bit lame now, but I left because they wouldn't give me a company car, right? And it's like, I'm out of here, But it was a good move, I'd been there a long time. And from then I started, I guess, just chasing kind of money, which in retrospect was a bit silly. So I went to other roles and, set up warehouses and did project management. Probably spent about 3 or 4 years just doing other bits and pieces, chasing the car and the 6-figure dream. It wasn't until I ended up at Sealord, running the Australasian supply chains and stuff, and again getting stuck into software. And it was during that time I thought, well, I was contracting and earning. I'd reached this goal, and I thought, well, this is actually kind of boring. And so I had to talk to the wife and thought, well, in all the career choice I'd made, I got to see quite a few businesses. And one thing I took out of it is that a lot of businesses were running accounting software, but heaps of spreadsheets. And when looking at those a bit closer, we realised that people were kind of managing their stock outside of their accounting software. And I happened to meet a guy, because I did end up going to uni, because I thought if I had a piece of paper I could get 6 figures type thing. And so I did a postgrad in operations management, but I didn't study or anything like that. It was a piece of paper. But anyway, so I'd met a guy during that who we ended up working together, and we kind of had the same idea. He could code a bit and access databases. I knew my stuff and could talk a lot. So I thought, well, if I sell this stuff, you can build it, and we'll build, I guess, customized inventory apps which integrate with accounting software. And that was over 7 years ago.
And that was the genesis of it, and you actually began the business through Massey, through the incubator program there. How important was that in terms of being able to get started?
Yeah, looking back now, it was essential, but not for the reasons we thought at the time. I mean, initially I thought I'd just work from my dining room table, but soon realised that I wasn't out of my pyjamas by midday, and I just thought, no, I need separation. So we were Auckland alumni. We thought maybe the Ice House, but the other guy I was working with was an Orewa, and I didn't mind travelling a bit, so we looked around. There's Massey incubators, and we went in there, and I'll never forget the interview, because we had 10 ideas which were all going to be successful in 6 months, and we're going to be millionaires. It's amazing. The first thing they said is just pick one, stop being silly. We got told off on our interview, and we're like, oh, it's a bit deflating. But they accepted us in, and initially they said, okay, we'll wrap some accounting people around you, some legals, give you a bit of advice. But what they kind of did is just they left us alone. And because I think what they look for is not just great ideas, but the people to affect that. And in retrospect, you've got to have grit. Because a lot of people have these ideas, and after 3 months of not making money, they just stop and try and do something else. And there's no point in supporting people like that. And so I think they saw that in us, because we effectively spent 2 years annoying people. We were building crappy software, delivering it late, over-promising, under-delivering. And our first set of tools weren't even online. So it took us a year in the nether, much to the disgust of our wives, earned no money, did 100-hour weeks trying to make this thing work, but we learned a lot. And one thing at that time was that the online software, option was coming out, and I wanted to play golf and make money. I didn't have to work for it. And I thought, well, here's a really good excuse, because you can just charge them monthly for hosting. And it's actually a valid charge as compared to installed software with some magical service charge of 20% a year or something like that, which you don't actually get anything for. We thought this is good. And we had to start bootstrapping. So we went out contracting again, so working day and night, hired a couple of pretty bad developers, and over the period of a year we built the second iteration of what is now Unleashed, very powerful online inventory software. It did more than our current software does, but its architecture was a disaster, and it was too complicated. It did more than what people needed, and I remember it vividly. It's like, oh my goodness, we've been doing this 2.5 years, and now we're going to have to start again. And that's when Xero popped up, because we thought, well, hang on, well-funded accounting. We'd talked to them. In fact, we integrated a little bit initially with that second iteration, but we talked to them and said, what do you think? Because we think it's too complicated. It wasn't even replicable. You couldn't buy it online. We still had to set it up.
Of course, they weren't focusing on any of this area, were they? They were just purely doing the accounting side.
Correct. And that, I look back, and our good decisions were not planned. But based on that conversation, because we had talked about doing POS as well, and even accounting, we've got all this stuff. But one of the best decisions that came out of that is we'd just do inventory. And in hindsight now, just doing that means you're part of an ecosystem without as many crossover competitors.
How much was the cloud the game changer for you as well too?
Well, it's essential, right? Because even now, if people don't want to go online, there's no point in using these apps, because there's offline apps or software that does more because they've been around for 20 years. And the uptake and the trust that people have had in that. When I first started, just a perception, I reckon in New Zealand, 5% of businesses would have trusted online software to run their business on. And in the past 5 years, that's probably grown to about 50% now.
And of course, this week we got the IRD giving the sign off to Xero to host in the cloud.
It's fantastic. They have a great ambassador for it. And between them and banks, people trusting online apps, it's just getting bigger and bigger. And I think we're really only about 5 years into a 15-year journey globally of that. And New Zealand actually kind of leading the way with that trust, which is fantastic.
So Xero has been the hub, really. It's a hub and spoke situation. And therefore, without Xero, could you have achieved what you've achieved today?
No, I doubt it very much so. I mean, because they did everything really well. Their founders were smart, marketed well for a raised a good enough money to start well, as compared to some of us smaller guys. We were just bootstrapping, and they did it really well. And they had a global vision, obviously starting in Australasia, but they knew that something was going to happen. and because they raised that money, built the awareness, not just from the world, but through the accounting channel, which many people would perceive as the path to market for these online applications. They started getting stuck into that. They got traction, they did it really well. So without them, we kind of just sit a little bit in behind that, because they, do a lot of this promotion of online safe and building good apps, getting people to trust them. And if you need inventory as well as accounting, here's Unleash. So we've worked closely with them from the outset. The guys in Auckland, we had beer with them, every month. Knew their husbands and wives and kids' names and things like that. It's been a fantastic.
So it's almost like an extended family.
Yeah. Well, the same was with Vend. There's some payroll guys at the time, Workflow Max. We all knew each other. We all knew each other's names like 4 or 5 years ago. So it's really cool to kind of see how it's evolving around the world.
How much did you research? How much has this been a customer-driven strategy, as opposed to you kind of sitting down and actually writing the software and designing the system?
Yeah, well, I think we learned a lot from that second iteration of Unleash, is that we can build what we want because we can be inventory geeks and this is how the world should work. But we realised very quickly that was wrong. And when you start building things online, you can't just have all the features instantly anyway. So we put out like basically a purchasing sales system to integrate with Xero. And then we listened to the clients, because we put up a forum. It's one of the first things we did. So what's next? What's the next feature? And effectively, that's how we run our development pipe. We've been out there for a few years. My guess is to get, the features I want in there, we'll take a couple more, but we listen to clients. And especially as, Xero evolves, I've got a little bit of inventory now. So it's not so much just your features, it's who you integrate with as well, which expands you. Point of sale, we're a business-to-business tool, right? So we need to integrate with Vend for people to boxes over the counter, and e-commerce, integrate with Magento to ensure that we can fit and evolve not just our features but who we integrate with, to ensure that a SaaS component solution is viable to the end user but easy enough to set up by an accounting channel.
So have you got customers coming to you saying, can you do this, can you do that? Are they driving the strategy, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll find that customers are quite loud with what they should, what you should do. And we started off by wanting to be an inventory management system, and what we've realised is that the world kind of sees warehousing and inventory as pretty much the same thing, but a warehousing system is actually quite different. So we're now going through that path, because we know between things like warehousing and assembly options, the world doesn't really have it yet, and they're screaming for us. Like, what do I do? What do I do? Because the options are not great. If you want to get online, they're expensive, or they're just offline, and there's not many, because I think a lot of big companies in the world have built software, think that just doing a copy paste of their desktop version online will happen in a month. But we know it takes years to build this stuff and build it well. One of
the features that you've developed is it's customizable, isn't it? You can do all kinds of things with it. Has that been a real selling feature for the software?
Yeah. Well, we do work off one, platform, but we knew quite early on that we had to scale the offering. Just a one size fits all was not going to work. And that's from a monetization point of view as well. I think one of our first clients went on to us and Xero, both at $35 a month, and they were turning over 10 mil and had replaced us with a six-figure ERP. Sorry, other way around. They had a six-figure ERP system, and it's like now they're paying $70 a month. Like, there was something wrong here. And we also knew, as we were releasing more features, that the little guy that doesn't need all that needs the option to turn them off and on. So we're flexible across, I think, 4 levels, of features. And there's a little bit of setup and customization in it, but we knew we had to scale.
What have been the real challenges for you? Frequently talked about in terms of capital raising. Has that been an issue? And what are the other problems you've had to deal with along the way?
Yeah. We've raised money several times. In fact, kind of my role evolved from product management into having to get in front of investors and convince them at an early stage. There's Xero doing quite well, but who are you? And you realise if you want to grow, you need to spend lots of money, therefore you need to raise it, because you're not going to earn it quick enough. It's not kind of how the online environment works. So we were very lucky to pick up initial angels. Meanwhile, a bit of bootstrapping and a lot of hard work. I slept at the office, all those fun stories. And so many times we thought, we'll just raise this and it'll be enough, and then we'll break even, off we go. But we soon realised there's no such thing as you don't stop raising, because if you stop raising, you're not spending enough. And we're on that pipe. So I think we've raised money between angels and VCs like 5 times, but we'll raise more.
You've just been off to San Francisco for a couple of weeks and you've come back and found you've got another 4 staff working for you. So, that's a typical situation.
Yeah. Well, I think, look, it was a couple of years ago now, one of the best decisions I made, because as a founder, was hiring a CEO who was way smarter than me. It has worked out that I can go off and do stuff now, and I guess eventually the company gets to a size where it gets a bit of a life of its own, and that's kind of now in place. Because we need to get another 40 within the next year. I mean, a lot of it's development. We've already had kind of articles in the press about where's all the developers in New Zealand, because there's a lot of need here. And we've got a standing order for about 30 or 40, and we're just about to pick them up. You can't get them quick enough. So we need to grow, absolutely. And now it's not just a New Zealand thing. We've got offices obviously in Australia, looking at San Fran and London, and finding the right people up there. It's a journey. So between development and resources and marketing, there's this little combo that you have to try and achieve to globalise. That's the part we're in right now.
What's the big 5-year goal?
Well, when I first started, I would have thought, wow, it would be amazing within a few years to have like a $10 million company. I thought that would be awesome. But that's obviously evolved as we've seen the opportunity evolve. And we've set it at being a $1 billion company.
And you could potentially look at sort of just mirroring Xero and going down an IPO somewhere down the track?
Yep, yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, when you think about potential, not exit strategies for the company, but some of the investors in it, that the float is a good way. There is obviously acquisition, but we don't know that. And between either option, it doesn't change what we have to do kind of now, which is how we look at it, that it's just foot on the gas and grow. But looking at a float, that'd be fun.
What you wish you knew at the start that you know now, what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, well, I mean, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, coming out of the incubator. We love giving back and trying to help, these guys with ideas. But if I knew it would take this much work, I may not have done it, because it's easy to have ideas, but it's hard to affect them. I think the cash is king thing, and it's a bit of a paradox in New Zealand. It's hard to start a business and actually kind of keep any kind of share in it without raising money. It's a really hard thing for entrepreneurs. So I think probably would have saved up a bit more, maybe built a few more relationships first. You are very, very naive. But even that advice we got from Massey Easton at the beginning, one idea and stick with it, that would have been awesome, because we got distracted a lot. But it is hard to make it all sound positive, because it's hard work, but sometimes the entrepreneurs, they just need a reality check. It's not romantic. It's not. It's gritty.
You've got a confident style. Has that been also key, do you think, to part of the success?
Yeah. I mean, someone wise once told me that your network is everything. If you can't communicate with people, well, that's 90% of any role. And I don't know kind of where I got it from. I think just knowing you've gone through it the hard yards, you're not faking anything. You've learnt the hard way. You started off complicated and became simple. Like, why did I not think of that beforehand? So I guess it's just because, you've been in the trenches long enough that you kind of just know this stuff. And once you get out there in the community, like, everyone's fun, and this is such a cool opportunity. How many people get to globalise a business? It is exciting stuff.
And just finally, lots of youngsters, of course, thinking in this space at the moment. What advice do you give to a young person who's wanting to perhaps follow in your footsteps?
I think it comes down to relationships. I mean, having a good idea is the key thing. Working your butt off and not doing it for money. I think otherwise you'll just get disappointed real quick. But then forming relationships with like-minded people, other companies that are like you, aligning with them, because they'll give you a passive leg up. And really being open and listening to the market. We got it wrong a few times because we thought we knew what was right instead of just listening. I mean, and everyone says that. You can read it in a book, but once you have to affect it and realise that maybe you're not right, being humble while you do it, absolutely.